Oh, I'm sorry. I think we have a delay, but let me ask it this way, Andy. Is it true that Black people weren't exposed to Christianity until they were on the hulls of those ships coming over here from Africa?
No. Um, the concept of Christianity comes from Africa. Uh, the concept of monotheism, which is a pillar of Christianity on the theological level, stems from Africa and some of the African spiritual systems, religions. The Coptic Church is one of the first Christian churches. Um, but of course, as we understand it now, Christian, the root being Christ, uh, was after this monotheism and the belief in God of Abraham, Joseph, and Isaac came about, right? So there is Christianity in the Coptic Church, and then there's Christianity as we understand, like the New Testament time period. So yeah, we didn't get exposed to Christianity 400 years ago. In fact, Christianity has been around in Africa and monotheism and the direct lineage of Christianity for thousands of years in Africa. So
why do they keep saying
we,
that?
we,
Because
we, yeah.
that's what I don't understand. Like what? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about why it's almost a controversial idea, even among certain Black people, to say the truth, which is the fact that Christianity as we know it was an African concept. I mean, when you even read the Bible talks about, I think it's in Acts, when they thought that Paul was a Roman, was an Egyptian because of the way he looked. When you look at the churches of Galatia and Ephesus and all of these places that are Mediterranean, places that are right, there in, if not Africa proper, but in what was considered Africa at the time, like, why do they keep, and I'm trying to be nice when I say they, but why this lie to keep perpetuating, to keep saying that we didn't know anything about Jesus until we came over here in slavery?
Right. Well, who bears the key has the control, right? So what was packaged and sold throughout Europe after, thousands of years after, hundreds, definitely hundreds after Jesus walked the earth, but several thousand since these concepts were uh, going around in Africa. So what was packaged to the slaves or the people on that transcontinental slave ship, I contend, is different, right? So you have the same title, if you will, right? So we'll call it Christianity for all intents and purposes of continuity. But the book is different. It's kind of like when you're in college and you have to get a new book for the class, but it's the same information. But professors have muscle where they change the edition, they'll change some key facts, and throw off scantrons and things like that to make it almost essential for you to buy the new book, to have an easy time of translating what's going on and follow what's going on in the classroom to the book, right? Because they'll change the syllabus and you're trying to follow the book and you realize, oh, wait, chapter 13 in last book is now chapter 5. And now you're having to alter how you're thinking about your class, how you planned your class, just to, or right, that's one aspect, or you're compensating in order to make up the difference on the fly, right? So you're saying, teacher says, turn to page 5. You're now trying to translate page 5 to page 35 in your book. And that might seem easy. You might grow up saying, I'm great at the hustle. But nonetheless, there's time that's wasted. There's efficiency that's lost. And we know in that space, translation can be lost, right? So you might miss something. You're going to have to calculate on the fly, right? So I bring that metaphor up to say, like, that's what we go through as Black people. We are left to translate something that we know, but has been altered. And then now you have to contend with a certain alteration that just, for whatever reason, it's just like, but we're also left with a fullness that we know and we're familiar with this, right? So this is something that we can't ever deny. And it puts us in a precarious position, right? Because just like we try to find the words to dabble around it because of the level of respect that we have for order. All right. And I use that term intentionally because as a people, spirituality and religion are something that is essential to us in our continent. And people might disagree with what religion, how to follow it, but as a whole, order is a preeminent status quo as it pertains to personal and moral conduct on the planet.
Yeah. You said a lot of things. So you kind of suggest that Christianity has been altered. And almost, when we say Christianity, especially when people just jump on, I want people to be very clear, at least my perspective. I don't, purport to speak on behalf of anybody but myself, that Christianity, it's a lot of things that are using that title that perhaps are not it. So, that becomes concerning. But, you mentioned something interesting. You gave an analogy about a textbook, like in school, you have edition 1 or edition 2 or edition 3, same information, but some of it's been, switched around some, and that being sort of where we are as a people, left to try to pick up the pieces from what we knew to be Christ and what we've been told to be Christ. Because this when you start talking about how religion has been used, the sad thing is that religion has been in some ways the most positive, most progressive institution ever created by man. Religion is created by man, I believe, not spirituality, but religion's our way of understanding God. But it's also been the most destructive. I mean, it's been wars fought over it. It's been a lot of, I don't think the slave trade would have lasted as long as it did in America. Certainly not Jim Crow and the lynchings and the rapes and the tortures and mass incarceration and all this stuff that's happening, were it not for this religious sort of perspective that says, well, whatever with them. First they tried to say that the Bible condones slavery because Ham was cursed. Remember that one? We've clearly debunked that because the Bible never even says anything about Ham being cursed. So that came out. That's an outright lie. And then people will pull out little parts of the Bible, be subject to your masters. You know how we do. We cherry pick the parts of the scripture that mean most for us. But I guess, let me ask you this, Andy, like, where do you see, obviously we're moving.
Can I just, on that point, I know there's a little bit of a delay, but that's the thing, right? And that's the crux of religion, that we always know that the Creator has given us free will, right? So that book could be meant to empower, but now let's say you're empowered. What do you do with that power? That is what we deal with in the physical world, that we have not been consistent with the ideas and values that we say we uphold, or that this book says that should be something that is essential for our society to be in order or even civilized, right? So
Yeah,
We do
no,
know the information, but what do we choose to do with it? How do people choose to use this quote unquote power?
that's a good point. Being empowered to do what? So where I have a couple things I want to ask. Let me start with this. I believe that there are a lot of young Hispanic and Black men, in particular, I'm talking about now, that have turned to Islam. Um, some of the Nation of Islam. I'm talking about as a religious
Mm-hmm.
solution. I don't mean just for activism or, I appreciate somebody's speech. I'm talking about religious, this solution for spirituality. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that more than not, now I still believe more than not, that population of young Black men and young Hispanic men are Christians if they, point to any religious structure. But increasingly, the Nation of Islam and Sunni Muslims, the Sunni, Muslim structure as we know it, has claimed more and more of their lives. Why do you think that is?
But I think, I think that's more of a social phenomenon. And that's something that we have to understand about religion. Like, as you said earlier, religion is created by man, right? So as Black men and young Latino men, Black and brown people around the world, when you look in the mirror of the society that you participate in, you don't see yourself, right? So you're in a constant search through the mirror world, if you will, trying to find yourself. And religion provides that empowerment, sense of purpose, order, um, answers questions that people might have, or should I say, it satisfies the questions, right? Because the answer, nobody really knows. That's why we have faith. But it satisfies that desire, that yearning that we have to seek. And it satiates that for a moment, right? But that in and of itself is something that we should question. But that is somebody's own personal journey of self-sustenance and pushing forward, right? Because how can you ever be full? You eat every day. So as it relates to religion, we need to kind of understand where that is, and this all ties into Black men and young young brown men, where that provides a certain structure, a value structure, or tips on how, basically look at it as an older brother or experienced people, a manual, if you will, of tips to how to best handle what life has about you.
But why Muslim though? Why? And this is not. And this is
Well, because they care, right? So they do have that. They do provide that plan. They
ah.
do provide answers, right, to how to find yourself, how to be a man, how to conduct yourself, how to have a household, how to feel great, how to know where you came from, how to find a place where you don't feel like you have to hustle or do something that's outside the system, because now they welcome you into a system where they provide financial help. You could go hit the corner and sell bean pies in the newspaper and feel good about yourself, that you have a job. People know what you do. You can get security work with the Nation of Islam. You can do other things. Um, so, and then they also preach a message of empowerment to Black people,
Yes,
specifically. So you're not necessarily contending walking into a church and seeing Leonardo da Vinci's cousin.
Oh, don't even go there because that's going to offend somebody. Um, so let me ask you this.
Something will always offend somebody.
You ain't lying there, and
but the truth will set you free, right?
Yeah, that's the truth. And yeah, that's interesting though. I think you're right. I think they have spoken to a segment that and certain issues that the church has largely been silent on. Largely, I mean, you of course have many churches that are speaking out on those same issues, but more than not, you're right. I mean, you almost. This is what's interesting. I feel like the Nation of Islam in particular, I have to be very careful how I say this.
Mhm.
If it were purely a social organization, I would probably
Mhm.
stand behind 90% of what they say. Now, some of the things that they say when they start talking about the Jews and all that other stuff, I necessarily can't go there. But as a purely social structure, as a platform to uplift Black people, I'm almost 90% behind what they say. The religious
Mhm.
stuff I can't touch. And of course, when we talk about Sunni Muslim, it's nothing there for me.
Mhm.
With Christianity, I'm talking
Mhm.
about widely Christianity as it has been preached and practiced and propagated in America. I almost feel like you have to ignore the social aspect, right, in order to follow it
Mhm.
fully. So I almost feel the opposite with that. So it's no question in my mind, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. But it's all that other stuff that they've attributed to Jesus. Because if I didn't know Jesus and I just heard from them about Jesus, I would think that Jesus didn't like people. I would think Jesus didn't like Muslim people, because that's almost like how it's preached, that Jesus don't like nobody that don't look like you and me. He really isn't a fan of people who, or maybe been in slavery or something, because he obviously prefers the masters. And he's a fan of people who are on top and have power. But that's not true. So I guess I'm just saying, like, it's interesting how one has one solution, the other has what I feel like is the other solution. But like, how do you navigate that? So it's an interesting question.
I mean, I think this is for me, right? No, well, this for me is, and I might offend people. Um, I've had these conversations with my family and stuff, so I would hope they understand. But this is what my problem is with religion. That for me, it is a pathway to the Creator. See, that Creator, God, Elohim, Allah, El Shaddai, there's over thousands of names for the Creator, is the point. All right. So if you look at XYZ ABC chart, right, there's always going to be a center point. That every line, that every circle, that every triangle that you point on that graph would be able to recognize that that is the point. And I feel like, religion is great. It brings in relevance to the dynamic diversity that the earth has, right? It allows the Creator to connect with every being on this planet in a way that they feel is meaningful and that they understand. That to me is beautiful about religion as a whole. I particularly grew up in a Christian home, and I understand Christianity, um, right? So that is my prism of understanding, and how I've expanded that, right? And that's where I think I've not evolved, but I don't know what to call it, right? Because I try to be within a certain bounds, because that's how I grew up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that I see Christianity as the way that allowed me to see the God of everybody, right? So that becomes a very intricate juggle on this planet as you walk here in that realization, because I can now see Nation of Islam. I can see now a Hindu and Buddhist as my brother in God,
Is you
as
said,
my sister in God.
yeah, you said something interesting there. Let me ask you this: is Allah the same as Elohim?
Yeah. I
Interesting.
believe, yeah, right? Because we understand these are, you call me Andy, there are people who are going to be like, who is this guy, Andy? You're one of the few people who call me Andy, period. So most people know me as Andrew. A lot of people call me Andrew March. A lot of people call me March. People call me Drew, right? So there'll be an audience that maybe know you, that know you call me Andy, but people who might know me be like, oh, this guy Darrell calls you Andy, Andrew. All right. So you call me Andy, right? But you know me, and I'm still me. The same way that another friend calls me Andrew, they know me, but I'm still me, right? So, like when we talk about Allah and we go into the book, and um, Abraham, right? We know Ishmael. So we know that Ishmael, who's considered the father of Islam, was the, right?
No,
No,
go ahead. No, go
go
ahead, because
ahead.
it's a delay, and
Because
I
you
need
know
to
where
treat
I'm going.
that.
So,
Because don't go there. Because no, I don't think Ishmael is the father of Islam, but I know people have thrown that out there. I don't know where that comes from, but
well, that's the lineage, right? When I say father, he might not have developed Islam, but that is the birth seed. He is the progenitor of that seed, right? Because Abraham was the progenitor of what? The three nations. So Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, right? So if Isaac, his other son, he has two sons. If Isaac, his other son, we know Judaism is coming through Christianity as Yeshua is coming through the seed of David, right? Ishmael, right? The way that that has a link to God is through Ishmael and Abraham. Now, that lineage diverted almost immediately from Abraham, right? So then there becomes a lot of deviation, but we have to understand the origin. And that's what I'm saying. Religion creates the story after that.
but if that's the case, that's like, okay. So you said a couple
Yeah.
things. Let's go back to your naming analogy. If two people are both, because it's not just about the name that's that we are contending about here, and I think that's a good point. Like, I call you Andy, somebody else might call you Andrew. What is it? But if you're not in the room and I'm saying Andrew and somebody else saying Andrew, like, is that the same person? And I say, yeah, the person I'm talking about, he's a Native American guy that's 6'5", and has big shoulders, right? This is not you, Andy. So it's clear that we're not just using different names. We're talking about different people. When one says that
But you've seen me to have that reference.
Yeah, well, you need a reference, but if we're using different names to also denote different people, then it doesn't matter about the names at that point. The fact is, we're still talking about two different people. So if the entity that has been described as Allah is an entity that is wrathful, judgmental, and I say that in the nicest way, certainly is not a father of his people, because anybody that's Muslim will say that Allah, you're not a child of Allah, you're not a friend of Allah, you are a slave of Allah. That's one entity. But then there is Adonai, Elohim, who we are told we are made in his image. That's not the case with Allah. That we're told that we're his sons. That's not the case with Allah, right? So there are definitely, I think, some core differences here.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you. I don't believe that that is one perspective of Islam. And, Allah is a God of peace, the same way that God destroyed the Christian God, right? Elohim destroyed Sodom, the same way he eradicated the entire world, the world that Allah or whoever other God that you're proposing is not the ultimate creator of Christianity, completely destroyed, right? But we understand him as our father, right? So it's like if our dad gave us a spanking, it's not the same as somebody else's dad giving us a spanking. It's like, wait, no, you can't do that. I could take it from this guy, but you can't do the same thing, right? So I think, like, kind of how you worded it, and that's kind of what I'm alluding to. We think we're so different, and we're saying the same thing.
We're not saying the same thing, Andy.
Our God is not a God of wrath, is judgment. But that's what I'm saying. This is where I'm disagreeing. And I'm saying where these things that you said, I think there are examples in the Christian God, whereas you're saying the things that are present with the Christian God and are void in Allah. I believe that there are examples of that in Allah. I'm saying, I believe that they're the same being. So the way somebody now relates to that person, right, that they have never seen, right? So to take up your analogy, if you are now in the two room and you are saying Andy and somebody saying Andrew, and you have not seen me, but you both have interacted with me, you both know me, you will, to the tooth and nail, fight that your 6'5" Native American perspective of me is the right one. And conversely, the other person will
I got you.
think that the 5'2" version of dark-skinned Andrew is the absolute one.
That's a good.
Now, it would take both of you to come together and really do for a Star Trek fan, a mind meld to understand, right? And this goes back to what God told us, right? In Babylon, you will be confused in your language so that you don't basically know your brother.
So you don't
know.
So
we have to understand. We have to understand. We have to understand. We have to understand that God is a God of everything. We as Christians cannot limit God. Period.
Wait a minute.
Now, I think. Wait. Let me just finish because I'm gonna tie it up. No. I'm gonna tie it up. But right, with all that I said, as a Christian, you understand that Jesus, as you said, is the way, the truth, and the light, which is the Christos spirit, which is the portal for which you go to God.
Okay, yes. And I think you're absolutely right. Not limiting God, because at the end of the day, it's faith. Who truly, really knows? And I absolutely agree with not just seeing God through your own prism, right? But I think that, and by the way, Slayton's commenting on Facebook. What's up, Slayton? How you doing, bro? That's one of our Morehouse brothers. Just wanted to shout him out right quick. So look, Andy, I'm okay. So I didn't even get to touch the whole Ishmael thing, and maybe I will get to that later. But let's get back to this sense of Allah and Adonai being the same person. So, okay, so I'm with you, and that's a good point about it. We've never been in the same room, the 6'5" Native American and the 5'2" dark-skinned black man, and maybe we had them confused. But let's take the physicality part out of it, right? We've got one Adonai who has explained that it's not just him, it's the Father, it's the Son, and the Holy Spirit, that he sent his Son to die for our sins. What quality are you seeing of that in Allah? I mean, that's almost blasphemous to them, right? I mean, I don't want to make something up here, but Allah, as he has been...
And I was going to make this point within the Nation of Islam. For example, the Nation of Islam, to the earlier conversation, why Black people are attracted, well, the Nation of Islam preaches a lot of the Bible. Because within Islam, Yeshua is a prophet. See, he's what they consider a lesser prophet to Muhammad. That's where we start to disagree. But if you're talking about the teachings, but hear me out. If you're talking about the teachings of Yeshua, they talk about that too. Because he's a prophet in that lineage. He wasn't the last one. We believe, Andy, as Christians,
what happened? I'm not talking about the teachings, Andy. We're talking about being Savior, Lord, Deliverer, the only way, truth, and life to salvation.
I understand that. We understand that. Right, but we understand that inherently by them being different religions. But what we're talking about is how they are similar. How we can see Allah as being somewhat similar and or having similar qualities to your question of Elohim.
Are they the same person? Are they the same person? I don't want to get into similarities because, me and a rock are similar because we both on Earth. But
this is right. We are, you see, okay, so here's my long, short answer of it. That, right, it depends, right? I should have gone to law school, but I'll bring up my law school wishes now. It depends. And why do I say it depends? Because we don't know. Right? So that's why I'm saying if we get anything out of religion, it should be how to love one another, how to be accepting of all of people. Because when we start to get into a real pointing of fingers, we end up saying, you know what, I don't think God did that. And these are things, right, that I am less comfortable going down the road than being comfortable knowing that he got my back. He created me to interact with my brothers and sisters, regardless of how they see themselves, because he saw them well enough to put them here, to breathe next to me. And yes, there's poverty in the world, there's evil in the world, all of that in the world. But he also tells us, if you do you and follow how I have shown you how to walk, none of that matters. It doesn't matter because you will be in the perfect world that you are to create. Whether that means the energy that you create will keep all that negative stuff away, whether that means the energy you create heals the planet, whether that means people who you feel are quote unquote blind can now see. Regardless of your perspective, what will change is your understanding of how big and loving and all-encompassing God is.
That's not a legal answer, just so
And it
you
sounds
know.
great, right? It sounds ethereal.
That's not a legal answer, just so you know, having gone to law school myself. It's
No,
a
I know.
political
The
answer.
legal answer ended at it depends.
No, that's a political
No, the
answer.
legal
Because
answer
you never
ended at it
answered the
depends.
question. I love the answer. You're right. It helps us see God as more and loving and powerful. And you know I'm all on that. You still never answered yes or no. Is Allah the same entity?
But that's what I said. That's what, right. But that's what you're contending. I don't have to repeat the fact that I think they are the same person. That's what I said. I think they're the same person. And now you're trying to come up with reasons that they are not.
That's what I'm supposed to do.
So that burden is on you to prove that, because I feel it's in the Bible. It establishes the same root for the same Father. Now, how these people refer to the same Father and how they looked, right? Because now we have to appreciate, as we established earlier, that religion is a social order. We have to understand the cultural differences that people will see the same idea and shade it differently based on culture. So what is freedom? You go ask somebody in Atlanta what freedom is, ask somebody in Oakland what freedom is, ask somebody in Wichita what freedom is, ask somebody.
You're muted. You're muted, Andy. All right, Facebook family. See, he got muted because he talking some stuff that's not true. That's why he got muted. I didn't mute him. I'm gonna promise you that he can probably hear me. I think he might have to jump on and jump off. I absolutely do not agree with my man Andy that Allah and Elohim are the same person. I think it is absolutely different. And this is, of course, no shade or judgment on people who follow one way or the other. That's not what I'm here for. But I think we do have to establish as a foundation what's happening. Andy, are you there?
Sorry about that.
It's okay. I was talking about you to my Facebook fan. Did you hear what I was saying about you?
No. I cut out for a second.
I said you cut out. That sound cut out because you're talking some nonsense right now. You my man. But
actually, the sound did cut out. The sound cut out because my stepmom called. I have to, as we spoke about earlier. So no, but I'm good. That's why I wanted to take care of that, because I'm good, because now I'm alleviated of that. So the message is, I'm not talking nonsense. A route has been created so that I can stay.
Okay, I'm glad. But let me
That's perspective for us, right? That was perfect. That's perfect, right? Because that's what we have to contend with every day. And we don't know, right? So just imagine we're trying to know something that's infinite and great and limited and say, no, the way I see it through my two eyes or the way my grandmama saw it is good enough for her, good enough for me. We're good and you're wrong. And I need to now do the worst things that my God has done by example, right? But we're not on the same standing, so he hasn't done that as an example to me. He's done that as a reprimand to me. But now I've thought myself so great that I can now employ his actions onto other people that he has not employed his own actions on.
Yeah, I mean, no.
Right? This is.
Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
When it's religion, we have to be very careful, because I totally feel what you're saying, but those end up breaking down into cultural differences and understandings. They don't break down into concepts of like love and agape love. Now, if we start tackling that as it pertains to theocracy, the value system that we should have established, whether it comes from A, B, or C, if we realize, right, that's what God said. God's laws don't ever break man's law. There's no law man that God is going to break with his law.
That's not, Andy, huh?
So the 10 Commandments, right? For example, right? That doesn't break any human law.
I don't think that that's true at all. I mean,
So
you have
there's a
human
place where
laws
it's against the law not to steal, not
against
to.
the law. No, I mean, I don't know how to answer it that
What I'm
way, but
saying is now, let me make it more clear. Let me make it more clear. The law that God has given to us is really simple.
I agree with that. I mean, that I
It's
agree.
very
But
simple.
man's
We
law,
have overcomplicated it, right? We
you,
have overcomplicated with our ideas and our perspective. And this is why we are so far away from him. We're so
look,
far away from him.
I got you. And I like that. I mean, I think, I mean, you're on to something when you say, how can we, with our own finite sort of understand infinite, awesome, and, God that put the cosmos in the. And so I think you're right there. I mean, it's definitely something to be said there. I still can't move off of this foundation for me right now, today at least, September 1st, 2020, that how Allah has been described. Let's move Allah away from it for a second, because I don't want people to think I'm picking on that expression of some God with a little g. Let's
You
just talk
said it. It's coming out. The truth, right? Expression.
expression. You're
That's a
right.
pivotal word.
But expression not of the one true and awesome God.
But what is an expression? Expression is part of a one true. An expression is a piece of that. Just a glimpse, an expression.
I don't know about that, Andy.
That expression that you've just made doesn't define you.
I don't know about that,
Right?
Andy. But can I finish
Darrell.
this one point? No, Andy. I'm not going there with you.
Go ahead. All right. I know. Yeah, I know you don't want to go there.
No, because, but this is the thing. Let's talk about how we've been taught. Forget how we've been taught. How we understand Christ. It is a unique concept that a God would come out of heaven to earth to die for his people. That's
not a unique concept.
It's not.
That concept began as Zoroastrianism. That concept began as Zoroastrianism. There are at least 10 deities that predate 10 sacred scripts, considered sacred scripts, that predate the written text in Christianity that have a virgin birth, that have a savior, that have some elements of whether it's a death or a sacrifice, long suffering.
Some elements. Good point. Not all.
But the unique is not the term that I would use, right? That goes more into the concept of expression. So I just want to. That concept isn't unique.
Yeah, I don't know about that, Andy, because I do think,
now,
you're talking
Jesus
about
is unique, right? Yeshua is unique.
That's what I'm saying, though. I'm not talking about
Horus between the context and the reality.
Yeah, but you're talking about Horus and all of that other stuff. I'm not talking about these people or these. They have pieces. Like one may have died, one may have had some human qualities. There is no other. I mean, prove me wrong on this. I want you to show me any other deity that you've heard of that was fully, truly God, gave up his God nature as the only true and living God, to come as man, to die for his people, to be resurrected again, and then offer salvation, another unprecedented, uniquely Christian concept, salvation. I don't even think when you talk to Buddhists, you talk to people that are Muslim, they're not speaking about salvation. They're talking about works. It's a lot of like what Judaism is, a lot of works, and do this and you get that, and do this and that'll happen in your life. But this concept of death, burial, resurrection, salvation, and grace, those are unique Christian concepts, Andy. And unless and until those concepts come together in another expression of a deity, I cannot entertain the fact that it's the same person.
Well, I don't think they're unique Christian concepts. I think they're concepts that are unique to the Creator, and the Creator is bigger than all of it. I think all of these concepts exist, maybe in pieces in certain places, others in in its entirety, but not the same way, right? There's just so many perspectives over thousands and hundreds of thousands of years, right? So yes, I could agree with you. Like, is it a direct translation? Is it a one-to-one copy? Absolutely not. But the world never works like that. That's just never how the world really works. And that's the way we try to impose what we can understand and quantify ourselves over the world that we know is, hey, it's a little scary, but we know enough to feel comfortable. So we're going to kind of stick to that and then impose this comfort on the rest of the world. And whatever we don't know, we just kind of like, it falls into a box and it just is what it is. But we'll kind of stick with what we know. And I feel like that becomes counterproductive, right? So I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but to a point, right? It is useful. Like, that's why I started off by saying I believe religion is a path, right? The path is only good until you get to where you're going. If you're still on the path and you see the place where you're supposed to be and you're not there, you're not there. You're still on the path. And that's where I see a lot of people get caught up because the path has gotten you there, right? So it's like, how do I let go of a path that's gotten me there? Well, you go to where you're supposed to be. That's how you let go of the path that's gotten you there, right? And that's where I feel like we get stuck. It's awful. And I mean, I'm not singling you out because I went through this and I do this at times. You even hear me compensating in the midst of this conversation by saying, oh, wait, let me stop because I need to quantify and contextualize because I'm not trying to be outside, right? That's compensation, right? That's born out of a level of fear. And we call it respect, right? We'll use that term respect, but it's not respect as in I can just talk about somebody and they know I have inherent respect. No, it's respect is I have to say I have respect so they know that I'm not standing against them because I don't want that problem, right? Right? The feeling that a lot of people really feel when they say I have respect. So I think we are stuck on the path. Religion keeps us stuck on the path and it doesn't let us get to that clearing where God is, where we all should be. But we're just stuck on the road and we're looking back and say, yo, look at what I've been through. This is what got me here. And we look forward and we're like, yeah, it's great. I'm seeing it. And I'm so captivated by seeing it. I don't need to live it. I don't need to go into it. It's enough. What I've been through is enough. My path is enough for me. And what I'm saying is, no, it's not enough. Break past that that social us, that he created this social contract to develop in us. And we are to get to that level of what God has for us because we feel like we're betraying the path that got us there. And I feel like we don't have the maturity to understand that the path is just a path. God is not the path. God is God. He's the great I am.
That's good.
The path is not God.
It's good. I mean, you give a compelling way of thinking. There's no question about that. I mean, it's definitely a lot to think about. What I do agree with you on is that God is vaster than what we could ever imagine, or more vast. I know the older I get, the more that I came to the conclusion the other day that, well, I think that there's a lot more people who worship and understand the one true and living God than what we might know based on the constructs we put in.
Amen.
So that I agree. I mean, that I agree. I still do think that there are some, I know we started by talking about this, whatever it's called, Allah, but beyond that, I think that there are some examples of gods, I'm talking about with little g, because we're gods as well, with little g, gods that are talked about, that it's like, that can't be the same, that nature as you're describing, unless you have that nature wrong. But that nature you're describing is nothing like the nature of the one true and living God that I know, that the nature, the core, the essence. So I still do believe that. And I guess that's where it comes in, because I think God is more vast what we believe, but it ain't everything. You know, and I think sometimes, and I'm not saying you're saying that, because I don't think you're saying that, but sometimes that's what people kind of, well, whatever you believe, that's what's true. Well, something can't be true. I mean, everything can't be the truth. Something's got to be a lie. And I'm not saying that everything has to be a lie except for one thing, but I don't think that everything can be the truth, you know, especially when there's opposing views.
And then the other part about it here, let me throw, where we talk about truth and a lie, but everything is not necessarily defined.
Well,
that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do that again.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm to the point. Give it up. Love God. Don't. It is what it is. Like, love God. We're here to build. Why are we worried about it?